I'm Gab. He's Jules. No idea still of the weather in West London because we're still in Doha. That's
We
right.
don't
There's a World
care.
Cup going on. And guess what, Jules? It's the Elite Eight. It's the quarterfinals.
Oh,
We're
yes.
getting we're getting psyched. We're going to put some huge games ahead. England against France. We've got Holland against Argentina. Mwah.
Yes.
We've got Portugal. They're plugging on. They'll be
Yeah.
playing Morocco, and of course,
Brazil against
we've
Croatia.
got Brazil against Croatia.
The last one.
But we're gonna come. We're gonna be back on Friday. You get us again in 48 hours. That's our gift to you. So that's gonna be after the first semifinal. We'll be looking at the second one. But there's one place I think for us to start logically. The biggest upset, Morocco and Spain. Jules, that shirt is getting a lot of use.
What a team.
And it
Incredible.
needs to get it's rightly so because let you in a little secret here. Every World Cup for the ambiance, you obviously all want your team to do well, but you also want the host nation to do well because everybody's jazzed, everybody's hyped. There's a feeling Morocco are like the host nation now. Qatar's out. Qatar were terrible. There's so many Moroccans here. They've been adopted by all the people from the Gulf
Yeah.
who live here. There's no question. I mean, it feels like they are one home nation. Argentina probably the other home
Yeah,
nation
for
just
sure,
because
for sure.
there's 40,000 Argentina fans here.
But they represent Africa and Morocco to start, of course. All the diaspora of Moroccan who live everywhere in France, for example, where there's obviously a strong community. But in the US, in England, we saw the joy everywhere in the streets of all the big cities around the world. But they represent Africa as well, of course, and they represent the Arabic world. And I think for them to be the first Arabic country to reach the quarterfinals of the World Cup, African countries have done it before, of course, Cameroon, Ghana in 2010. But as an Arabic nation, for them to do it for the first time in 1986, Morocco lost to West Germany and the Mataus late goal to lose in the last 16. So this was a historical day for them, and you understand why the support is so big. And I was at that game, and the atmosphere was just incredible.
All right, let's talk about the game. Normally we like to pick holes because, we sit there and we talk and we criticize because we're in the media. But before we criticize Spain, and I think we both have a lot of criticism for
Yeah.
Spain here, let's start with Morocco because obviously they knew that Spain were going to have the bulk of the possession. I didn't think they just sat and defended. I thought they were physical. I thought they were intelligent. They let Spain have the ball in areas where they couldn't hurt them. When they could, Hakimi on the right, Mazraoui on the left, they tried to break. They have that individual quality in Ziyech and Buffon. By the way, that little Techers move Buffon had.
Llorente is still looking for his bag
Oh my
somewhere
God.
on the pitch.
Marcos Llorente, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You're very handsome. I love you, but
But
come on,
no,
man.
he,
Right.
he made you dance there, big time.
So really, I think tactically, this was a game where he adjusted his game plan to Spain, and it worked.
Yeah, this was very much the message that Walid Regragui had for his players to be narrow, to force them to go wide, which they did, to prevent the passes from Rodri or Busquets towards Gavi and Pedri. And if you look at what Amala did and Unai did, they closed the inside so well that you could not find Gavi, you could not find Pedri unless they were on the halfway line, which is not where you want them to be. And then, yes, they didn't create much. And in a sense, Rodri is right after the game when he said, well, Morocco did nothing. Yeah, but I don't think the idea was that. The idea was to frustrate Spain and then see on the counter, on the set piece, what they could do. But I thought they were heroics in the way they defended. They were heroics how they played for each other, fought for each other, and played as a team. And on top of that, you had the individual brilliance of an Amrabat, of a Ziyech, of a Saiss who ended the game on one leg, literally limping and still was there fighting. It was an incredible, inspiring performance.
I think if we had to single people out, hand out kind of match awards, Ashraf Hakimi would be there. Bruno would be there.
Yeah, of course. For the penalty
Ziyech, obviously, with his quality. Buffon, just for that highlight reel move.
And Unai, who even Luis Enrique said, who's that number 8 that you had? Where does he come from?
But for me, Sofiane Amrabat, the pride of Florence. You talk about a one-man wrecking crew in that midfield. He covered so much ground. He did it with quality. He did it with intensity. He didn't just take on the little guys, Pedri and Gavi, who I think are still in his pocket.
Yeah.
But he took on Busquets. He took on
Rodri.
Morata when he came on, when he dropped off, when Rodri stepped into the midfield.
And the worst is that the night before until 3 a.m., because he had back problems, he stayed with a physio, working on his back. He played with an injection, which, trust me, it's not easy. You don't feel anything from your upper body down because that's what the injection numb your body, basically, so you don't feel the pain, but you don't feel anything else. And for him to put up a performance like this, and of course you could say that all the game was in front of him, which is easier to defend than if you have to turn around and run towards your goal. Yet his intelligence and the vista to the recovery of the ball, etc., was just outstanding.
Now, as often happens, these games go on. There's a lot of substitutes. By the way, all those people are like, oh, 5 substitutions ruined the game. I want to say this. We had 6 substitutions, of course, for each team because it went into extra time.
Yeah.
But I try to imagine what this game would have been with 3 substitutes. With 3 substitutes, the intensity would have really impacted them. The game would have slowed to a crawl, and we would have had basically nothing for the last half hour.
Yeah.
So
I agree with
honestly, thank you for the 5 substitutions. In this one,
I
especially
agree.
I think in a World Cup setting. But as the game wears on, extra time, teams get sloppy. You get chances. 2 of the chances fall for the guy who I was rooting for in particular because I believe I'm right in saying he is the last Italian left in the World Cup. Obviously, he's Italian of Moroccan origin, which is why he opted to play in for Morocco, I think, last year. Walid Khedira, he plays for Bari in Serie B.
He scores a lot of goals for them as well.
He scored, this season a lot of goals. But, those 2 chances. So the first one, I thought, dude, you got to finish better. The second one, he runs and runs and runs and runs, and he gets there, and he's like, he doesn't know what to do. And then the defenders close him down.
And you would feel on the second one, especially because of in the stadium, everybody was like, oh my word, he's going, he's still going. Oh, what happened there? I mean, the ball, it was like, but it showed as well the spirit that they had, and that's, of course, they were going to always play on the counter. They can't win against Spain by playing them off the park. This is not possible. Right. No one can do that. That's why I find the criticism of how Morocco played a bit harsh. But that was good, and he came on and did the job that Regragui wanted him to do. Yeah, of course he could have finished better, especially the one that Unai gives him that is so good. But eventually, at some point, it felt like Morocco were just playing for the penalties anyway.
And I haven't run through it, but I think part of the reason, not to get political here, part of the reason why Morocco resonates in a place like this where, as we said, 90% of the population who live in Qatar aren't actually from Qatar. This Moroccan team is made up largely of the children of immigrants, people who had to move.
So binationals. Almost all of them have 2 nationalities.
Bunu, I think, has been Argentina. Khedira
he was born in Montreal, in Canada.
So Bunu was born in Montreal.
Yeah.
But he also spent time in Argentina, if I'm not mistaken.
But he was born.
Khedira, obviously Italian. Amrabat and Ziyech, Dutch.
Yeah. Mazraoui as well. And then all the French, Saiz, Boufal.
Ashraf Hakimi, of
Unai.
course, Spanish. Very madrileño, in fact. It's pretty remarkable. And I think it kind of underscores how the World Cup often kind of reflects how the world around us is also changing.
And what was lovely, seeing the players after the game as well, is the pride for all of them who grew up with 2 cultures, and which is, I think, fascinating. And again, we go back to the same point, but this is what we are, and our family is the same. But to show so much pride as well, and I think something that the Moroccan Federation did really, really well, they invited all the families, all paid by the king. They were all there. For example, Walid Regragui's mum, Fatima, who spent 50 years in Paris, who never traveled. When he was a pro, she never went to see him. She never went to watch him. And yet she's here in Qatar. And she's been such an inspiration for her own son, he's a young manager. He's had 8 games in charge of Morocco, and they're in the quarterfinals of the World Cup. But I think for him to see his mum in the stands when she's never been there when he played, must have been something special. And we saw Hakimi with his mum, those very moving images and footage as well. I think it's incredible to have that kind of emotions and support.
It's a remarkable story. And on the dual nationality piece, like I said, Jules and I speaking out of the same hymn sheet because our kids are dual nationality, triple nationality in my case. Guys, you can be 100% one nationality and 100% another nationality. I don't know if these people feel this way or whatever, but there's no sense of split loyalty. You're not 50-50. You're 100-100. I know it doesn't make sense math-wise, but it makes sense in real life. It's how you feel, Simple as.
Exactly.
All right.
You know what I love, just to finish on that, I saw Unai after the game and he said, the thing with Bunu, and Bunu is such one of the nicest guys in football, and he speaks Arabic and Spanish and French and English, and his voice is so sweet. Everything is great about him. And Unai said, we knew that if we were getting to the pens, he would win us the game. He said we knew it before, even before the start. And he said we didn't play for the pens, but we knew that if we got to the pens, then Bunu will win us the game. And I think they went into that penalty shootout not overconfident, but knowing that in goal they had a guy who's going to do the job. And I think that must make it so easier when you're a taker. And they missed, obviously they missed one. But knowing that you had that feeling deep inside that your guy in goal is going to win it anyway for you.
I have to say, a lot of teams, after they win on penalties and their goalkeeper saves some, they always say that afterwards. But in this case, I kind of want to believe it.
Yeah, me too.
We're going to move on to Spain. And before we start the inquest, since you just mentioned the penalties, let's start with the penalties. Because obviously Spain knocked out on penalties by
Russia?
By Russia, and close calls against Switzerland in Euro 20.
Yeah, and by Italy as well in the last Euros, of course.
And he said, I've told my players to practice 1,000 penalties before the next one. And then he does something so weird. You describe it. I missed this at the time with the penalty takers.
Yeah, and I mean, watching it from where we were in the press box, and we had the camera that you could not see on your broadcast television, but it looked like he picked 3 players and then disappeared completely, and then let the players pick the other 2 in the order by themselves. So you could see Busquets writing down the name on a piece of paper before giving. And I was like, okay, this is weird. But I was not too sure. After the game, he said, I only picked 3 out of the 5. And maybe this is
responsibility to my players.
But even if that's what you want to do, at least stay with them. Be there, be part of the process. I don't understand how he can pick 3 and then just leaves. And then let Busquets, the captain, and the other deciding, okay, who else wants to go? What order? Who goes first? Who goes last? I don't know. I thought that was really. And then he sat on the bench when everybody was standing up in front of the bench. He sat on the bench to follow the shootout, and I was like, well, this is strange. Doesn't feel like he's part of the whole thing.
It feels like it's the kind of thing, and I hate to say this because, I'm a big Luis Enrique fan. I love him as a person. It feels like the kind of thing that you do if afterwards you want to write a book about coaching philosophy and, look at these weird, unusual, counterintuitive things like I do. Like, telling Busquets, you sort out the rest, right?
I know,
Only
exactly.
the first 3 and then going off. And
they could have still won it. I don't know. Maybe not. But the fact is they didn't win it. And I don't know if that had an impact or not. I'm just saying that I've never seen that before.
I think also, I know Sarabia and Soler have a good penalty record and so on, but I don't know. I kind of feel like psychologically, again, you start with 2 of your less heralded players taking the penalty, and you still had Pedri on the pitch, you had Rodri on the pitch, you had Morata on the pitch, right? Who all could have taken penalties at that stage. Ansu Fati as well. And then Busquets comes up. I'm sure Busquets has taken penalties before, but you don't think of Busquets. It almost feels
Definitely
like,
not.
Sergio, you're the captain, you're the inspirational leader, and then you take the 3rd penalty, and then we figure out who goes out. I
know. He might have taken 1, but I don't remember. And from the research that we did, and producer Mikey as well, we could not find a record of him taking another pen. So what? You send him in.
To be fair, when you play with Messi and Neymar,
true. But then it's another reason why are you sending him to take 1 then?
Because he's the captain. I don't know what kind of weirdo psychology, but sometimes you don't need psychology. Sometimes you have the better players, right? You have people compare it to cooking a meal. You have the better ingredients.
Yeah.
Just go cook something simple with your better ingredients, and it'll be better than whatever couscous the other guy comes up with because he's got crappier ingredients. But you know what? On the day, you managed to screw up the recipe, and the other guy with the lesser ingredients outsmarted you, outcoached you, and outworked you.
Yeah.
And that can't happen, and it can't happen when we saw it happen in the game before against Japan as well.
I know. It's like they were warned and they didn't take anything from that defeat. And then you know what I think? I think they underestimated this Morocco side massively. I think massively they went into that game.
You think they underestimated Japan too then?
Yeah. But at least Japan should have been, okay, look, this is what happens. We might be in this situation again. And we play Morocco. Okay, we all knew how Morocco would play. It was a no-brainer. We said it on the show. On the FC show, I said this Morocco side is going to cause them a lot of problems. They're going to be so defensive, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to pen and then pens, anything like all of that. So how can you not more prepared and just pass the ball sideways? Again, Gavi and Pedri on the halfway line. That's not why I want Pedri and Gavi. They can't impact the game whatsoever in there. They need to find space somewhere between the lines on the edge of the box to turn, to play one-touch, quick football. Instead, it was so bad.
the other thing which struck me, one of the changes he did make, which I kind of liked and I would have liked. I'm a big Marcos Llorente fan. And obviously he's played wing back for Real Madrid with some success. I don't know how often he's actually played right back in the back four for the national team. It seemed like an odd change to make when you've got Carvajal and Azpilicueta. And obviously Carvajal wasn't great in the previous game.
Yeah.
Azpilicueta, I think, had a knock as well. But I don't know if this is the guy you want defending one-on-one.
No, but he moved him like almost inside, almost like what Pep Guardiola does with his fullbacks for most of the game, to no impact, because that was also taking Gavi's kind of area. So then Gavi or Pedri, more Pedri, had to again drop deeper, and we go back to the halfway line where I don't want to see Pedri anyway.
Well, and this brings us back to the point about the stereotype of the Spain team: this pass, death by possession, until you see an opening and you shoot. And then they never saw an opening and never shot. And the obvious question is, why can't you be more vertical? And he defended himself before saying, we have to play this way. This is the way. This is the only way we know how to play. And I'm sorry, Lucho, when you say these things, at least come out and say, this is how I want to play because this is my vision of football. Because this is not the only way you can play. Because we've seen Ferran Torres be direct.
Yeah.
Dani Olmo at Leipzig, that's all about directness. It's all about north-south. And if you think those guys can't do it, then on the bench, obviously, you have Morata, obviously. Yeah. But you also have Nico, who we brought on. Who's more direct than Nico? Nobody.
But
and at the end, if they're all stuck there and they're all making a big lump in front of the box and you want the guy with the one-on-one and the magic, why bring on Ansu Fati so late?
But that game was crying for Nico and Ansu. It was crying. Like after 5 minutes, it looked like, okay, they will need pace and they will need some wingers who will take on defenders and then cross the ball in. So I will tell you what the best starting 11 would have been, 100%. And it's not because we've got hindsight that we can say, but you put Morata in there and you put Ansu Fati and Nico on each side. And then if you want if that doesn't work, bring on Asensio, Dani Olmo, Ferran Torres, whoever you want, your daughter's boyfriend. But it was always going to be like that. And as soon as Nico came on, and Nico is not perfect, he's still a kid, but you could see twice or three times him taking on Mazraoui, who's also a right footer playing at left back, taking him on, good crosses, being threatening on that side. That's all they needed.
And Mazraoui, not exactly the best one-on-one defender.
No, and not fully fit either. So.
I mean, I'm assuming he had some reservations about Nico's technical ability, relative to Ferran.
They needed some pace.
But at some point, you need to mix it up.
Can Lucho stay now?
So
should he stay? Does the federation want him to stay?
That's the big question. For me personally, I'd be surprised if Lucho wants to stay, in the sense that he's made his money. He has all his interests outside football. He's a cultured man. He goes and he runs a marathon in the
cycles
desert,
for hours. Yeah.
Does whatever, right? So he may why do I need this if I'm going to get abused, right? I could see him doing that, and he would live up to the character of Lucho. I think at some point, if I'm the federation, I tell Lucho, this is your plan of football, but we think it's problematic. It was problematic at the Euros where you played your best game against Italy. You deserved to win, but you lost that game. And in previous games, you nearly got knocked out on so many occasions. But you know him well. At European football and look how other teams play. Why can't we play like that?
I know, but you know him, and you know he's the most stubborn man in football in Spain by a mile. He's not going to change. But he's not going to change.
He's stubborn in the sense that I think he sees himself as standing for something bigger. He's not one of those guys who's stubborn because he's just stupid and he hates being told no. He just believes in this. So if you're going to embrace him, you have to embrace him all the way. And I genuinely don't know if he's the right choice for the Spanish FA at this point.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.